Hi, this is the interview show on Xpnsion Network. I'm Scott Ware, publisher of Radiance Magazine, which can be found at radiancemm.com. And I have with me a couple of experts in a subject you're going to want to know a lot about, because a lot of us during this pandemic are suffering from poor sleep, stress, anxiety, and these two experts can help us with that. We have with us today renowned human behavior expert Patrick Wanis, who's a PhD, and research scientist Chris Burres, who have both teamed up to help end this stress cycle and restore all of our natural sleep cycle. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you so much for having us, Scott.
Absolutely. Now, right off the top, and I know you have some offers that you're going to be offering to help people with this as well, but right off the top, what can we do to get better sleep, and why is that so important?
I'm going to start this one. I'm going to say what you can do is listen to the rest of the show, because we're going to give like very specific tips on how to handle the emotions that are associated with potentially losing sleep. Really some 3 key tips on how to make sure you have good sleep hygiene or good sleep practices that enable you to sleep well. We'll talk a little bit about how not sleeping well impacts your emotions and your ability to handle the emotions, and you end up in this kind of horrible emotional sleep spiral. And then we'll talk a little bit about, I'm a research scientist. I've been working with a molecule since 1991, and that molecule, people who are taking it are reporting better sleep. And so we'll talk a little bit about that.
And I assume we're also going to be talking about this whole thing about strengthening our immune system, how important sleep is for that. So that we
but
can...
you asked, yes, Scott, you asked a very important question, like why is sleep important? And interestingly, we are the only creatures on the entire planet who go out of our way to avoid sleeping for no good reason at all, with obviously highly detrimental consequences. Sleep is designed to repair, rebuild, rejuvenate the body. Our immune system is tied to our sleep. All of our physiological functioning is tied to our sleep. We don't just sleep for the sake of saying, I want to take a break from life. We sleep so our body can go into specific cycles to repair, rebuild, and regenerate. And something that people usually don't know anything about is, even during sleep, we are engaging in rebalancing our emotional system. So when you do not sleep well, not only does it affect your cognitive functioning, it even affects your immune system. Your immune system is lowered. And when you're in a highly stressed state, your cortisol levels are raised, your blood pressure is up, and you're engaging in the sympathetic nervous system, your immune system is suppressed. So when we're in a fight or flight state, we only have one focus, and that's survival, but survival in the moment. The ability to flee from danger or the ability to fight back. In that moment, the body releases certain chemicals so that it deadens pain within our body, but it also places all the focus on the extremities, the hands, the feet, so we can fight or run or flee. And again, it lowers the immune system, which makes us more susceptible to illness. That's why people who have constant chronic stress end up becoming sicker than people who don't.
A lot of that, obviously, it makes sense, and I've heard some of that before. I wonder if I'm like most people in that I just feel like, sleep's just going to take care of itself. As long as I just get to the mattress,
but that's
8
the way
hours
you were
goes by.
programmed. That's the way we've all been programmed that way. We haven't been programmed that sleep is a priority, except when we've got young children and babies who say, you have to sleep so you can grow. When you have to sleep so your teeth can grow. You have to sleep so you can rest. When someone's sick, what do we say? We don't say get up and go to work. We say rest. The body is designed that way, but our culture has been designed to focus on everything that's external, amassing wealth, amassing achievements, amassing power, influence, etc., and we've forgotten how important sleep is. And the most, other than obviously babies, teenagers actually need more sleep than the rest of us. So sleep is an important part of our entire health system. It's not something that we just do to say, I want to rest my weary bones. It's much more than that. And again, as I said, if nothing else, think about this, that when you're not getting enough sleep and you're not getting enough healthy sleep, your immune system is lowered. You can't fight back against all the illnesses.
So we don't have to, ironically, with all this information you're going to give us, it's not like we want to be stressed about making sure we institute those, but probably instituting just wonderful rituals into our evenings, for instance, as we begin to go to sleep or start to go to sleep and think about those things. We can really take it on like that, like it's this beautiful process that we're going to, as we slide into that next 8 hours.
And you've summed it up beautifully, because you said that it's a ritual and you prepare for sleep. And Chris will give you some specific tips in a moment. We need to understand that our body has a circadian rhythm, and that rhythm follows the rising of the sun, the setting of the sun. We engage in specific physiological processes at different times of the day. So therefore, we're also meant to sleep. And yes, the last thing we want to do is get you stressed out because you haven't been sleeping. We're here to help you, to soothe you, to relax you, to show you the way so that you can sleep better. When you sleep better, your immune system is enhanced and you can think clearly. You can handle and manage those emotions, overcome the stressful, agitative, painful emotions, and get a clear direction for where do we go from here, from this moment now.
Mm-hmm.
With everything that we're all experiencing, where do we go? And that was the purpose of the book, Neutralize the 7 Emotions That Are Holding You Hostage Now. When I wrote that book and recorded it purposefully for the pandemic, because there's 7 umbrellas of emotions that we're all experiencing. And in each one of those, not only do I define and clearly state what that emotion is and its impact, but I give you action steps on, well, how do you overcome sadness? How do you overcome fear? How do you overcome anxiety? What happens if you're feeling guilty? There are people who feel guilty because they say, I'm actually enjoying some of this this time. Then there are people who say, I feel guilty because I had no savings, because I've lost my job. So there's all this wide range of emotions that everyone's experiencing. And rather than just saying to you, get over it, time will heal, it'll all be fine in time. No, that's not the truth. The truth is you have to take specific action to change it. So go ahead.
I'd love to let people know right now at this point, as well as at the end, where they can get a hold of that audiobook.
Yeah, they can. The URL for that is you just go to myvitalc.com / the interview show, and you can get those books. There's no requirement for email. This is an absolute gift. Patrick and I kind of teamed up and said, how can we give back and really help people get a better night's sleep, help people manage the emotions that they're going through, and they can do that. Again, it's the Neutralize the 7 Emotions That Are Holding You Back Right Now, and then the meditation file, Overcoming Fear and Anxiety and Enjoying Peace of Mind. You can get those both at myvitalc.com / the interview show.
Can you tell he's a research engineer the way he's so specific? It's brilliant.
Yeah. No, and
did I check all the boxes?
Yes. Well, and Chris, why don't we take it to you now? And what are some of these tips that people can utilize to get a better night's sleep and therefore have a more invigorating life in general?
Well, yeah, and I don't know that we've covered well how important it is to get sleep and how important it is to manage your emotions and how intertwined those two things are. And that's kind of the purpose of the book and the tips I'll give you here shortly. What we do know is if you don't get a good night's sleep, your ability to handle your emotions is significantly reduced. And so then now your emotions aren't handled, you're going to bed and you're thinking about all these things that you really needed to process while you're asleep. That's keeping you from sleep, and it becomes just this horrible emotional sleep spiral. And we want to help get you out of that. And that's what that free audiobook for is. And then that's what I'm going to give you 3 tips right now for sleep hygiene. And I think you're right, Scott. We don't want to like have any stress about these. Like, let's incorporate these as quickly as you can because they're going to be beneficial, and incorporate them into your life. And the first tip really is limit your naps. Be careful with your naps. I know a lot of us are at home where we've never been home before. Maybe we sit on the couch for lunch and then next thing you know, you're asleep. And actually, it's well proven and documented that taking a nap is actually good. You just want to make sure that your nap, and it's good for your mental focus, it's good for your health, it's just good for anything. There's a really good book out there that I would highly recommend people get, which is called Why You Sleep by Matthew Walker. He was once at Harvard Medical School. In that book, it talks, yes, naps are good and actually helps your cognitive function. just make sure that you're taking naps before 4 o'clock. You take anything after 4 o'clock, it's really going to be detrimental to your sleep cycle. And then also make sure that your naps are limited to 30 minutes or less. You just want to make sure that you're controlling that. Otherwise, you're going to interrupt your sleep. The next is these guys, right? We've all got these electronic devices, and we know actually there's very good research. These electronic devices, including tablets, including your computer monitors, give off blue light. That blue light actually sends signals to our body, to our mind that say, hey, what is the current lighting situation outside? Where should I be in my circadian rhythm? Should I be preparing to go to sleep, or should I be preparing, to stay wide awake? And those devices cause us to stay wide awake. So you want to turn those off. We really say two things about electronics. Let's get the electronics off and kind of out of our mind, if you will, 1 to 2 hours before we go to sleep. I recommend a lot of people just plug it in and recharge it right at their nightstand. I would recommend that you actually have it outside, maybe even on some small table outside your bedroom, so you never actually take those devices into your bedroom. Also, each of these devices has like a blue light filter device. I know on the iPhones, it's actually called the night shift. Look for that feature. You want to turn that on a number of hours. I know Patrick, Dr. Wanis, he actually leaves his on all day in order that the natural light from the window is actually more controlling his circadian rhythm than the overly blue light from the monitors, right? And Android devices, depending on your device, it's Comfort View, it's blue light filter. I know on actual PCs and laptops, I think it's more built into laptops. You got to go through a little effort on PCs, but go just search for a blue light filter and take advantage of that.
Yeah, I just want to say that particular element right there sounds very important, especially for people who want to tune in more to nature, natural surroundings, and just the worldly circadian rhythms. And I'm definitely going to look for that and find that, because the devices have enough control over us, if you will, sometimes unconsciously. We don't realize it, but that particular one, it's interesting what you're saying it's doing. It's actually injecting into us sort of a false sense of what's happening in the world around us, and we can filter that.
So on my laptop, because I've got Windows, I just swipe from the right, and there's a whole little panel of icons, and there's a piece that just says nightlight, and I just click that on, and you can tell it goes a little more yellowish. And now it's not going to impact my circadian rhythms. And yes, Chris is right. I live in front of the beach, and I have big glass doors, so I get the natural light, and that's the light I want. When the sun rises, I wake up with the sunrise, and once the sun starts setting, that's the time to start going to sleep.
Yeah,
that's an example of us not having our devices tell us what's going on. We're in control here.
Yeah, take back that control. I think your statement was pretty poignant, where it's controlling us, and it's obviously not just the blue light, but that's probably another conversation. So really, we got limit naps, take naps before 4. We've got control this blue light, and actually again get that device off an hour to 2 hours, preferably 2 hours prior to going to sleep. Let's let your mind unwind. And then the third, I think some people, some of the feedback I've gotten on this one has not been as positive as you'd like, which is steer clear of alcohol. So a lot of people say, hey, I can have that one glass. There's lots of studies that say 1 glass of wine up to 2, like 2 is actually right on the edge of pushing it, is actually shown to show health benefits. Just don't take that right before you go to sleep. There's a lot of parallels, and this was drawn out in that book, Why We Sleep. There's a lot of parallels between alcohol and the current quote unquote sleep aid industry. These are prescriptions that you take, and what you do is you take them right before you go to bed. And some people take that drink right before they go to bed. And the challenge is especially with the sleep aids, you wake up in the morning and there's a chemical pressure in your body called adenosine has been released and relieved. So you wake up without the desire to sleep, but you haven't gotten the sleep that you need. There's really 2 types that are pretty important. Everybody's familiar with REM sleep, right? Rapid eye movement sleep. And then NREM sleep is another type of deep sleep, where you're actually doing emotional repair, physical repair to your body. So imagine somebody hits you in the head with a club, you're out for 16 hours. You don't wake up going, well, that was refreshing. I needed 16 hours of unconsciousness. And that's what alcohol and those sleep aids are doing. It's interesting because this molecule that I've been studying and working with since 1991, the people who take it, they actually take it in the morning. They report mental focus and energy during the day, which is great. But what's unusual is they report better sleep that night. So I'm not really aware of, it's like the antithesis of the sleep aid industry, the pharmaceutical sleep aid industry, where you take it in the morning and then you sleep better that night. So those are the 3 tips so that you can have hygiene. There's a number of others, but those are the 3 that we'll cover today.
Excellent, excellent. Now, can we talk about snoring?
So I'm definitely not a snore expert, and snoring is not my purview. I don't know if Patrick has any insights into snoring. I know that snoring can be stress related, and so you want to kind of listening to Patrick's books and actually getting that good night's sleep is actually going to help your snoring. Patrick?
Yeah, I haven't done a lot of studying of snoring. Not many clients have raised snoring. Most clients talk about insomnia, or they talk about disturbed sleep, or they talk about bad dreams or nightmares. A lot of them talk about flashbacks. And so all of that whole list always goes back to your emotions, and your emotions are first and foremost impacted by your thoughts. So what are the thoughts that you are having that therefore lead to the emotions you're experiencing? So, for example, we have this whole unrecognized list: should, ought, must. These are the expectations that we place on ourselves and the people around us, that people should be this way, that people must do this, that people ought to do that. Have we lost Scott? I don't see Scott.
His picture is there.
Okay.
And it's still recording.
Okay. So what's interesting is that we created these expectations, and it's these expectations which become thoughts and beliefs that therefore negatively impact our entire life. One of the first expectations we have, and every one of us relates to this, is the idea that we have to be perfect. And we have to be perfect 24 hours a day. And and we're not allowed to be sad. We're not allowed to be unhappy. We're not allowed to experience pain. We're not allowed to experience suffering. So at a time like this, when there is real loss and there's real grieving, we say to people, be strong, be happy, time will heal all, you'll be fine. That's not true. Time in and of itself does nothing. If time healed us, why would we be talking about something that happened 5 years ago? Why would we feel angry about what happened when I was a child, or the ex, or the divorce, or this or that? If time heals all, time doesn't. It's the action you take. That's number one. Number two, what are your belief systems? What do you believe right now about what's happening? There are people that feel angry as well as feel frustrated. And that's fine to feel angry, because I teach in my audiobook, I say it very clearly, and I teach to my clients, you're allowed to feel whatever you feel. Whatever you feel is fine, it's important, and it makes a difference. Question is, how do you respond to that feeling? What are you going to do with it? Are you going to feed it? You're going to continue to become angrier? And when you become angrier, what is it doing to your body? Because anger is catabolic. It actually destroys your body, breaks it down. And will the anger help you to achieve what you want to achieve? Will it change things? And when you're trying to change things over which you have no control, you then go into the wonderful world of anxiety. Anxiety is the feeling and belief that your world is out of control, coupled with the intent to try to control the things you can't control. So when you're trying to control things you can't, you become more anxious, you become more fearful, and it can lead to fear, it can lead to anger and frustration. Ultimately, you got to say, the emotion I'm experiencing now, how is it helping me? How is it benefiting me? Is it getting me closer to where I want to be? That's I was just going to say, it's not just emotion. Go ahead, Scott.
Okay, yeah, I was going to say, so you just opened up a whole other avenue. By the way, I noticed I hadn't plugged in my computer, and it went dim, telling me I had less than 5%. So I scrambled to get it plugged in.
You rescued it in the nick of time.
Yes, yes. So, okay, now, Patrick, you've just gone, so you're talking about our emotional state of mind, even spiritual state of mind, just what, yeah.
They're connected.
Absolutely. Well, yes. And what, how that's going to affect your sleep. So that's very interesting. So
Well, let me explain how it affects your sleep, because what it does, whatever emotions you feel affects your physiology. And basically you go into the fight or flight response, or you go into the sympathetic nervous system or the parasympathetic nervous system. Those nervous systems are connected to specific physiological functioning. When you're in the parasympathetic nervous system, which is all about rest and digest, your body's resting, you're digesting food. When you go into the fight or flight, as I mentioned earlier, what happens? You stop digesting food, your immune system switches off. When you have chronic stress or elevated stress, your cortisol levels go up. Your endocrine system is put off balance. Therefore, what happens? You're not getting the rest you need and you can't sleep properly. So you end up, again, I think Chris described it earlier, the horrible emotional sleep spiral, as he calls it, which is you've got all this stress throughout the day. You've got all these thoughts and emotions that are agitating you and that are impacting your body. Then you go to sleep. You can't sleep because the rumination, the negative hallucination, the worrying is still going on. The anxiety is still going on. Then you don't get the REM or the NREM sleep, and those sleeps help us to process our emotions. So you wake up the next morning, you're foggy, you can't concentrate, you can't think properly, you don't feel awake, you feel tired, your endocrine system is out of balance, and now that makes it worse when you're trying to deal with your emotions. So we are really a beautiful, holistic entity, a creature, and we need to take more care of ourselves rather than thinking my priority is only this thing. I have to get that possession, I have to get that position, I have to do this, be that, have that. And now you've forgotten about what you referred to a moment ago, Scott, which is also your spiritual component. So I say you got to look at yourself holistically, which is mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual. Mental is what are your thoughts? Emotion is what are you feeling? What are you experiencing? Physical is everything that's tangible. It's the physical world. It's the physical body. It's exercise. It's deep breathing. It's meditation. And spiritual for me isn't just a connection to a perceived higher power. It's the way we connect to all living creatures and all living beings. And when we connect to them, what are we doing? Are we helping or are we harming? Are we living from the heart with an open heart? Are we giving and receiving? Are we sharing and allowing to share back? How are we interacting with the world? Because the way that we show up determines our reality. And just to wrap it all up, to bring it right back into a circle, all of that affects the way you sleep. Think of the times when you're really happy in your life and you feel fulfilled and you feel like that you're living in alignment with your values, you sleep beautifully. But once you start doing a job you don't like, or you start living a life that's not in alignment with your values, not in alignment with your core essence, you no longer can sleep properly. That's when you begin to have the nightmares and the bad experiences and the sweating and the tossing and the turning. Then your immune system is suppressed or lowered. Then you get sick and then everything gets worse.
This is fascinating because I've never thought of looking at my life, my spiritual life, my emotional life through the prism of my sleep. And in a sense, it's what you're suggesting almost as a modality, looking through that lens to see how everything else in your life is being affected, to how you can make tweaks and changes, or just actually just sort of open up some lines of inquiry into why we're miserable. I mean, we could be in the wrong domestic situation, whatever, or the wrong job situation, and there's deeper layers there, of course. And sleep and our wellness from good sleep, we can sort of use that as a contrast, it sounds like.
Yeah, you can actually use your sleep as a way to reflect to you, how am I living my life? If I'm not sleeping comfortably, I can't be living a good life. I can't be living in alignment with my values. And just very briefly, in traditional Chinese medicine, they do talk about the balance of the emotions and the link between the emotions, the organs, and sleep. And I think it's really important, again, to recognize that everything we're experiencing now negatively impacts our sleep and affects our immune system, making us more susceptible. Chris?
Yeah, I think when you think about sleep, and you've kind of touched on this a little bit, in our society, society understands that good sleep is good for our mental, physical, and emotional well-being. And then we say, so it's really paramount. You have to get sleep, unless there's something else to do, right? And then you should do that and we can sleep later. And, and it's just not the case. Like getting that sleep, and I do highly encourage people to get the book Why We Sleep. I'm not being paid for this. It's just a phenomenal book. And it's one of the scariest books I've ever read as it relates to sleep, because it talks about the negative impact that a lack of sleep has on your cognition, on your cardiovascular health, on your immune system, on if you don't get sleep for a number of days, you actually will show up on a blood glucose level as having diabetes, even though it's just your pure lack of sleep. It's so impactful into what's happening around you. And it's really the reason that I'm excited about the molecule that I've been researching and the results that people are getting from it, because I didn't sell this product as something where people, hey, this is what you need to take to get sleep. People were buying it because of the original study, and I can talk about that here in a second. And because of that original study, that's the only reason I was selling it. And they were coming back to me and saying, hey, I've noticed that I'm getting better sleep when I'm taking this molecule.
And
Is that what those well-rested people pictured behind you were taking?
Yeah, exactly. Highly energetic, well-rested people right here.
And Scott, Chris has a great story about the discovery of this Nobel Prize-winning molecule. And before he says that, you've said something which I think needs to be addressed. And that really is, well, but are we getting good sleep? Here's the ultimate problem. Unless you're in these extreme states we've described, where you've got insomnia, you're snoring, you're having bad dreams, you're waking up halfway through the night, the brain can't tell you that it hasn't gotten enough sleep. So if you go without enough sleep, your brain doesn't say, hello, Patrick Wanis, you only got 6 hours sleep. We're now functioning at 65% instead of 100%. So in other words, your brain doesn't know that it's been impacted. And we've talked so much about this from the book that Chris mentioned. After 24 hours without sleep, your performance is impaired to the same degree as a legally drunk person of blood alcohol content of 0.1%. Would you let a drunk Uber driver drive you home, or a drunk doctor operate on you? And
or fly your plane.
Right, or fly your plane. And a physician who only has 6 hours of sleep has a 170% increased risk for a serious surgical error. And again, he doesn't recognize that he hasn't gotten enough sleep and it's affecting his cognitive functioning and even his motor abilities. That's why we can say to you, this is why we're here to tell you, you've got to get healthy sleep. And I think the story that Chris is going to tell you is really mind-blowing about the discovery of this molecule and how it turned out to be so great for sleep.
Okay, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, so it's pretty amazing. I actually started a company back in 1991. It was based on a discovery that 3 scientists made. They actually made it at Rice University in 1985. They discovered the 3rd form of carbon. So we're all familiar with diamond. We're familiar with graphite. That's the lead in your pencil. They discovered the 3rd form of carbon, which they named fullerenes. The most abundant fullerene is actually a buckyball. The best way to describe it, well, is really not to describe it. If you're watching the video, I'm actually holding a model of that buckyball up right now. The best way to describe it, if you're just listening though, is if you imagine a soccer ball, the lines on the soccer ball represent the bonds between the carbon atoms. So you have the 60 atoms, it's 60 carbon atoms in the shape of a soccer ball. So they discovered it in 1985. The scientific community really went nuts over this material. In fact, 10 of the 10 most referenced papers in 1991 were all related to this buckyball and fullerenes. So that's how excited they were. That's how excited they were is also why they won the Nobel Prize. And they actually won that Nobel Prize in 1996.
Well, it wasn't because they were excited. It was because it was a great discovery.
Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't really a popularity contest, and the buckyball won the popularity contest. It's not like American Idol. I mean, there was legitimate research. I mean, this particular molecule is superconducting. It's harder than a diamond. It'll actually turn into a diamond. There's 6 planes of symmetry on this buckyball, so it makes it incredibly resilient. You can actually fire the buckyball at 10,000 miles an hour at a plate of steel, and most molecules just shred and fall apart. This one will actually just compress and then bounce back whole. So it's a really, really amazing molecule. Now, they figured it was very much like benzene. And if you don't know, if you're not familiar with benzene, that's okay. A lot of people aren't, but it is paramount to our society. If you just glance around you real quickly and just notice everything that's plastic around you, benzene is the foundation molecule of all plastics, most medicines, detergents. Again, we don't have modern society without the benzene ring. Well, there's multiple benzene rings on this soccer ball. And so they figured that this soccer ball, this buckyball, was going to be a 3D version of benzene. And if benzene is so ubiquitous, eventually this buckyball will become ubiquitous. And anytime there's a material that's kind of new, you got to figure out if it's safe. They actually assumed that this buckyball would not be safe because the benzene ring by itself is toxic and it's a known carcinogen. So they assumed this buckyball would be toxic. So they did a toxicity study that was published in 2012. In that study, this is a phenomenal study. They gave rats water, they gave rats olive oil, and then they gave rats olive oil with so here's where I like to make a demarcation between just carbon 60 and what I call ESS 60. Carbon 60 is for industrial applications, and there's peer-reviewed published research that says it's toxic, right? That shows that it's harmful. ESS 60 is carbon 60 that's been processed for safe for human consumption. So again, they gave those rats water, olive oil, and then olive oil with the ESS 60 molecule. Instead of being toxic, they actually
manufactured.
Say that again?
Which your company manufactured.
Yeah, we actually delivered the material to that University of Paris group. We're actually mentioned in that paper. And again, it's peer-reviewed, published paper. Those rats lived twice as long, almost twice as long. They lived
because they slept more?
Well, certainly we know that sleep is good for your mental, physical, and emotional well-being. Yeah, the exact mechanism is probably related to, you got to be very careful with the FDA. The fact that the ESS 60 molecule can fit into the anti-inflammatory diet, and the fact that it's an antioxidant. In fact, there's one study that shows 172 times more powerful than vitamin C. So current thoughts on aging, medical thoughts on aging, are that it's an oxidation and an inflammation process. In fact, Dr. Wanis just sent me an article yesterday talking about inflammation in the brain and its effect on all the degenerative diseases in our brain. And so oxidation and inflammation, you've got this one product that is an antioxidant and fits naturally in the anti-inflammatory diet. So it's kind of not a surprise that they live longer. And maybe even more important than that they live longer, they actually died without tumors. So a typical Worcester rat lives 32 months and it has more tumors for each day it lives, and it dies again at 32 months. The rats given the MyVitalC formula actually lived out to 62 months and they died without tumors. So it's a pretty phenomenal result. Well, it's actually the longest longevity experiment on mammals known to man. Of course, it's peer-reviewed, published research.
Okay, so and this connects to good sleep. How?
So really in about mid-2013, we started getting phone calls. Hey, how much in a dose? You got to imagine me. I'm not supposed to be selling a supplement. I'm a carbon nanomaterial scientist. I put this in tires and ink and solar cells and batteries. We actually advise them, hey, don't put this in your body. Again, C60 for industrial applications harmful. All of the properly processed C60, the ESS 60, was shown to be safe. We're just ultra conservative. That's how scientists are. So we were still selling it. It was sold for research purposes only, and it was sold in very generic labeling. Like it wasn't like sold as it's going to do this for you or it's going to do that. It's like, hey, there's this rat study. If you want to do it, this is the same thing they used in that rat study, manufactured by the same company. And people started coming back to us and saying pretty remarkable things. And the most consistent thing that they say is they take it in the morning, they have mental focus and energy during the day, they sleep better that night. And again, I'm a scientist, so I don't really like, oh, I sleep better. I like very binary, like this is obviously something that's easy to understand compared to that. And I've got a business coach who said for 50 years he needed an alarm clock to wake up. And then after he was on the MyVitalC formula, he no longer needed the alarm clock to wake up. He was just waking up naturally and waking up well rested. got another lady who was actually in the office. Sometimes this can be pretty subtle because we've all had like 1 extra hour of sleep or 1 less hour of sleep, and we kind of go throughout our life. I gave a couple bottles to the lady next door to me, and I went back to her like 7 days after that. And I said, so have you noticed anything? And she was a little disappointed. She was like, oh, Chris, I really haven't noticed anything. And for me, I'm a scientist. I'm not some genius who says like, hey, I made this in a pot and now you should take it because it has all of these characteristics. It's just more data points to her. But I did ask her, hey, how's your sleep? And her eyes just got super huge. And she's like, you know what, Chris, I've been posting on Facebook that I'm waking up at 4:30, like way before my alarm clock. Excuse me, 5:30, not 4:30. She might have complained if it was 4:30. She was waking up at 5:30. And so that was a very binary result of people getting better sleep when they're taking the MyVitalC formula.
And Scott, the other thing that's interesting is because I spoke to a lot of these people. In fact, some of these people happen to be my clients, which was my first introduction to ESS60 and the MyVitalC formulation. And they were saying, well, I've got greater strength, I've got greater flexibility, I don't have the joint pains I had, I don't have the neck pain I have, I don't have the back pain. And one of the guys who actually works for Chris and who I've known for many, many years, said he began it, I think, about 2 or 3 years ago. And at the time, he used to have pains in his knees when he used to play soccer. Then he started taking the ESS60 MyVitalC formulation and the pain went away. And to this day, he still plays soccer. I think he's in his mid to late 30s. He says, I play soccer and now I don't have joint pain. So it's bizarre how it was a whole plethora of things. Now, without doing the even further detailed studies, do we say, are these all the result because they're sleeping better? Well, we know that sleep has become a big common theme amongst all the people who took this, who are saying, I am sleeping better.
Okay.
And
so
it's really what brought Patrick and I together on this, right? Because it's pretty clear that this horrible emotional sleep spiral exists. It's related to emotions. It's related to sleep. And so let's figure out a way to kind of address. Patrick's amazing at addressing the emotional side of things. And I've got this, I'd like to say I created this thing in the lab that helps people sleep, but really I've been making this since 1991 and people tell me that it helps them sleep. That's the real story. And so when we marry these together, we've got this opportunity to really positively impact. I mean, sleep is good for your immunity. It turns out that the MyVitalC blend actually has other features which cause it. It's a known antibacterial. It's a known antiviral. It's an antioxidant 172 times more powerful than vitamin C. It fits in the anti-inflammatory diet, which is kind of the most I can say based on the FDA. And then all of these reports of the better sleep.
And Scott, the reason we came together was because of because I'm sure that you're going to say something similar, but when this pandemic occurred, we were all thrown as if you were riding on a horse and you just got bucked off the horse. Yep. And in the beginning, before I even started coming up with the action plans, which I put in the book, I too was challenged and thinking, okay, I have to reevaluate my life now. I have to work out what really has meaning now. What's going to come back and what's not going to come back? I don't know, but right now there's extraordinary insecurity, instability, and fear. For me, it wasn't the fear. I wasn't afraid about getting it because I think I actually got it in December anyway, after I'd been at a big exhibition for the first time in maybe 5 or 10 years. I had the flu and it was the worst experience I've ever had. But for me, I don't remember having respiratory problems, but I remember having extraordinary pains in all my body, and particularly the skin. And I kept going upstairs. I live in a condo building. I went upstairs to the steam room like 3 times thinking, I'll steam this out. I'll burn it out, I'll get hot. But I didn't have fear about getting the virus. I was thinking my whole life has just changed, perhaps forever. Because other than private clients, I do major workshops for big companies that are all day, 8-hour workshops where people are undergoing extreme transformations. Imagine having a group of executives who are throughout, at certain points in the day, as we're working on authenticity and vulnerability, they're opening up and crying to each other, and they've bonded so deeply. And I put them all together and I say, let's all hug, look around the room, look at each person's eyes. Do you notice how softer everyone looks? Is that because they've changed, or is it because you've changed, or both? And the point is, the fulfillment that I get from these workshops is beyond description. But I
But when
may
you
never
talk
be able
about,
to, I may never
you
be
talk
able to
about
do that
people,
again.
you talk about people softening, that sounds to me like hearts are opening.
Yes, well said. So I don't go to a corporation and say, hey, I'm going to do an 8-hour workshop, and as I'm teaching about team cohesiveness, I'm going to get you to open your heart, because that'll probably get them to close their mind. So I'm pitching it more along the ways that the corporations want to hear, which is leadership, team cohesiveness,
Communication.
Communication. How can we build more trust? How can we be more productive, more profitable? And then what I teach them is that the entire concept of working as a team is built on the foundation of trust, and you can have no trust if you don't feel safe with other people around you. And other people won't feel safe around you unless you're willing to be vulnerable, because when you're willing to be vulnerable, they'll say, oh, Patrick, Chris, and Scott are actually human. I can trust them. Oh, they suffered as well. Oh, they had doubt. Imagine being in a workshop where the CEO of a company admits to his team that earlier in the day he was wrong about a particular process we did. And he says, I was wrong. I shouldn't have done that. Now, I didn't prompt him to do that. He did it on his own. So suddenly now people feel closer to him, whereas most CEOs think, I've got to show I'm tough, I've got to show I'm strong, I've got to show I'm smarter, I can't be seen to have weakness, not realizing that strength exists within vulnerability.
Vulnerability,
If I can be vulnerable to you, then I have no fear. That makes me strong. But if I'm afraid to show you who I am, then obviously I'm weak and I don't have courage. Courage is moving with the heart, acting in spite of fear. Courage means to put courage in the heart, to encourage someone. So everything that I teach really is about opening your heart. And so when you see these people transform, the sense of fulfillment, the sense of meaning you gain is extraordinary. And that was my point. I may not be able to do that ever again, or at least not for quite a few years, based on the way that the pandemic's unfolding. So when that happens, your whole routine has been cut, security stability has been shut down. Now you have to say, who am I? Why am I here? What can I do? And that's when I started saying to Chris, listen, let's do something. Let's put something together. And it happened that he calls me and he says, oh, I had a tough day today. And I go, what? And he said, I had a tough day, I don't understand. And I said, listen, I know you're taking Vital C, but we are in the middle of a pandemic. So it does make sense that you're going to be experiencing various emotions. And then I created the guided meditation and the audio book on how to neutralize those 7 umbrellas of emotions.
Well, let's go ahead and catalog these things, these offers. So it sounds like we're talking about 3 or 4 different things that people watching this are going to be interested in accessing. Chris, go ahead and mention those things to the viewers.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're giving away that audio book. We're giving away the meditation file. It's absolutely for free. You don't have to give any emails or anything. I'm going to go through my checklist here, right? That's at myvitalc.com/the interview show. At the bottom of that, you'll see a way to connect with Patrick. And he talked a little bit today about how he does group work. He actually works on an individual basis. He's worked with me and most of my team members because it's
as a coach.
Yeah, as a coach.
Well,
and
deeper
really,
than a coach too. Deeper than that. I mean, I'm actually doing a therapy technique.
Yeah, it's a therapy technique called SRTT, Subconscious Rapid Transformation Technique, which really is about not getting you into a session week over week over week, but about dealing with the actual issues, releasing the emotions of the issues. And it's interesting because he's able to do it in a very safe environment. Some people are very uncomfortable about approaching those because they feel they might have to relive those emotions. He's got a process to help protect those people from that. And literally in one session, you're moving on. It may take you a while to process that session before you're ready to do another one. At least that's what happens with me. But I'm not meeting with him week over week over week. So you can connect with him. There's a link at the bottom of the page there, or you can just go straight to patrickwanis.com. Also at the bottom of the page is the link into the MyVitalC website beyond just this free giveaway. If anybody's interested in trying the product, we do sell the product. We've got bottles. It's much better to get it on subscription. There's a 20% discount. And we also have an additional $15 off You got to use the coupon code The Interview Show, and you'll get that $15 off.
Excellent. All right. In closing, Patrick, did you want to share anything else with people about being in this pandemic situation, and even after? I imagine there's always going to be stress in life. What would you leave people with on that?
These are some of the things that I actually bring up in my book, and one of them is, obviously we talk a lot about meditation and yoga or meditative practices. Become aware of your breathing, because like sleep, breathing will reflect to you where you are. And when you're breathing very shallow and very rapidly, you're in a state of anxiety. When you breathe deeply and slowly and gently, you begin to engage the vagus nerve. You begin to engage the parasympathetic nervous system. You're calming your body. You're able to rest and digest. The next thing is, be aware that your thoughts are also creating a majority of your reality. There are things that we can't control. I didn't create the pandemic, neither did any of us here. But the pandemic is here, so now we have to ask ourselves, how am I going to respond? Your thoughts will determine what your outcome will be, because if you tap into your own psychological capital, hope, optimism, resiliency, and self-efficacy, you will find the ability to rise to the challenge, to overcome the challenge, to evolve and grow, to let go, to shed the old identity and welcome a new identity. Life may never be the same. And you still have to say, well, I have a choice. Am I going to remain miserable, angry, frustrated, jaded, vindictive, bitter? Or am I going to live life to its fullest? Am I still going to find meaning? No one can tell you what the meaning is for your life. You have to find it. There are lots of people who try to answer the question, what's the meaning of life? I say find the meaning for your life. Where is meaning in your life?
You could say the pandemic has given us all a big old permission slip to make changes that maybe we were always afraid to make, but or just to see who our true authentic self is and let that come out.
That's a great point, and that's one of the transformational exercises in my book, which is do an exercise to establish your core values and determine what are the real meaningful things in life, and live according to your values, live in alignment with your values. I just say, ask yourself a simple question. What are the five most meaningful things in your life? Could be people, could be something you do, but what are those 5 meaningful things in your life? What are the peak experiences that you've had in your life, both high and low? And what was it about you that helped you to rise to the occasion? What were those qualities? So get clear about your values, what gives meaning to your life, and be willing to reevaluate your life and be willing to say, I let go of all of attachment to these things. It doesn't mean that you stop setting goals. It means that you no longer judge yourself based on whether you achieve that goal or not. Because ultimately, really successful people know this. They got what they thought they wanted. And maybe it still is what they wanted, but they realized the attainment wasn't what gave the sense of fulfillment. It was the constant process. So hope is built by the perseverance, the willpower, the determination to keep striving for your goal. If we had no goals, we wouldn't have any meaning. But you're not going to suddenly be joyful when you got that car or that job or whatever, or even a certain state of body. It's the daily process that gives us meaning. It's finding meaning in the small things. It's going back, Scott, to what we did as children. Look at any child and they find meaning picking up a flower, looking at a butterfly. But here we go. We don't even notice the flower or the butterfly. We don't pick it up and smell it anymore. It's not about stopping and smelling the roses. It's about finding beauty and meaning in everything around you. That's how you get grounded. That's what we talk about when we talk about being in the present moment, engaging all of your senses to really enjoy what is here right now, and still finding that balance, the tension between here I am and I also want to be there. It just has to be a beautiful balance of tension, which keeps us motivated and excited and challenges us to grow and evolve.
Wow, beautifully said. You should publish that.
By the way,
I'll transcribe it.
He does do a newsletter every week. So when you go to that link, again, myvitalseed.com/the-interview-show, click through to his website, sign up for the newsletter. He writes an amazing newsletter. I don't know if he's still doing it every week, but I know he tries
every Wednesday.
Yeah.
I've been doing it since 2004 every week.
It's phenomenal.
So I've missed maybe 5 or 6 in those 16 years. So
and
I
he's
have
forgiven himself because he
forgiven
practices
myself.
his own.
I've forgiven myself for being human and being imperfect. So I've got 12, like
Okay.
1,200 articles.
Wow, excellent. Okay, we'll direct the viewers there. Also on the screen, they'll see that. And gentlemen, thank you. Chris Burres, Patrick Wanis, thank you for joining.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Scott.
Thank you.
All right. And thank you all out there for watching. Bye-bye.